And we are back with more Archie Sonic. You asked for it, you get it, so welcome back to the wild world of Ken Penders. In this episode, we're covering issues 25 and 26, as well as the Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic Triple Trouble special issues. It's a lot less than I said I'd cover in the last video, but my script was running a little long. 3 actual Sonic games are adapted in this set. We'll open up the events of this video with issue 25. One thing I should mention about this series is that every 25th issue in Archie Sonic is a milestone issue, and they are treated as very important. Often they're the ending to story arcs or adaptations of major games. This first one is an adaptation of Sonic CD. It opens with Rotor attaching a camera to Sonic's shoes in preparation for an excursion into the newly discovered Collision Chaos Zone. Interestingly, at this point in the Archie canon, different zones aren't just locations in Sonic's world, but actual other dimensions connected to the main world by portals, more akin to the Special Zone. Funnily enough, this also sounds like something they might be doing with Sonic Frontier. Please don't do Sega again, Ken. Meanwhile, Robotnik has already moved into the zone and taken it over, aided by his newest creation, the nefarious Mecha Sonic. And yes, since the name gets thrown around some, this is meant to be the version from CD usually called Metal Sonic, but he's given the wrong name here. His plan is to force Sonic into a race with Mecha Sonic, then crush Sonic at the finish line. Just to force the Hedgehog's hand, he also had Mecha kidnap one of Sonic's biggest fans, a young girl named Amy Rose, here depicted as a small child, though still very in love with Sonic. Sonic, of course, can't stand by any of this, and despite the ruling of the Knothole Council, which I guess exists now, it's just a parliamentary type committee made up of Rotor, Antoine, and Sally, Sonic sends Tails in to investigate. Tails, however, is immediately captured by the SWAT bots and put into captivity alongside Amy. Finally, Sonic himself has to go in. Sonic makes his way through Collision Chaos Zone and finally meets up with Metal Sonic, who talks here. That caught me off guard, honestly. He seems to have a somewhat similar personality to Sonic. The two race to the end of the zone, where Tails and Amy are waiting, though Robotnik has trapped the finish line so he can crush Sonic as he crosses it. That way, even if Sonic is able to beat Metal, he's still doomed. Sonic is able to get ahead of Metal by using his new move, the Figure 8 Super Peel Out, a move that was actually introduced in Sonic CD as an alternative to the Spin Dash, and blasts its speed so fast that Metal overheats trying to keep up with him. Sally is also able to jump in at the last minute to prevent Robotnik from manually triggering the trap. Robotnik ends up getting crushed while inspecting the finish line, and everyone is able to get out to celebrate the 25th issue of the comic. In general, I think this is actually a very good adaptation of the original game, though there are some pointless plot elements that exist just to make it line up with CD better, like Snively chasing after Sonic in a Robotnik suit. Amy also becomes a more recurring character after this, and Metal Sonic eventually goes on to become one of my favorite versions of the character, a long way down the road. Next, we'll move out of the main series comics and into the next double-length special, Sonic and Knuckles, an adaptation of the game of the same name. The actual timeline of whether this or issue 25 takes place first is unclear, so I just decided to put it here. In this one, an armed floating island is seen traveling over the continent, and heading towards Knothole Village. The Freedom Fighters are both surprised and confused until Sonic and Tails arrive to share their history with the island from issue 13. Be sure to check out the second episode of this series if you want to see me cover that issue. With that backstory in place, Antoine flies Sonic and Tails up to the island to see what's going on. They land in Mushroom Hill, where of course they're quickly found and followed by Knuckles, who thought the two of them were trying to turn his peaceful island into a war zone. After a battle with the original mid-boss from the in-game Mushroom Hill, Knuckles finally makes his move and attacks Sonic. However, they both end up getting knocked into Lava Reef Zone by a clumsy Tails. Tails does end up fixing this by saving them from the lava, and the three finally take time to talk. Sonic points out that the stars are at a different location than they usually were on the island, and it finally clicked to Knuckles that someone had hijacked the entire landmass, fitting it with engines and guns to use as a floating weapon. Knuckles takes Sonic and Tails down to the Chaos Chamber, where the source of the island's power sits. However, unlike in the actual games, this isn't the Master Emerald, just a single Chaos Emerald. In the Archie universe, at this point at least, Chaos Emeralds are much more plentiful. and at least on Mobius, are all green. Here, Robotnik finally reveals himself, explaining that he was the one who had taken control of the island. I know, we're all shocked. He intends on flying it over Knothole and bathing it in fire. Interestingly, previous comics had made it clear that Robotnik did not know the location of Knothole, so him knowing that here comes as quite a shock. Knuckles, however, thinks quickly and removes the Chaos Emerald, removing Robotnik's source of power and causing the island to start crashing towards the ground. To make it even more jarring, he also produces and destroys a fake emerald without anyone noticing. However, once Robotnik flees the island, Knuckles replaces the real emerald, putting the island back in the air and saving the day. Sonic offers Knuckles the chance to just stay around and join the Freedom Fighters, but he declines and they split, on better terms than before. There was also 2 backup stories in this issue. The second one just shows Knuckles in his day-to-day life, trying to keep the island safe and peaceful. The final story also hints towards the Knuckles solo series, but more directly. It features Knuckles noticing something setting off explosions on the island, and, assuming it's Sonic, as he does, Knuckles chases the mysterious assailant to Sandopolis Zone. However, the deeper they go, the more Knuckles realizes how little he really knows about the island. The depths of the temple are a mystery to him, and he wishes aloud that his father had taught him more about the place. Eventually, the temple starts to crash down around him, but Knuckles is able to escape and see that whoever it was that he'd been chasing was already long gone. The last panel shows us only the gloved hand of this mysterious individual, stating to himself that this was only the first of many lessons that he would teach Knuckles, and that class was now in session. I won't spoil who this character is for those who don't know, but he goes on to very heavily, once again, feature in the Knuckles solo series. In fact, coming up, Knuckles has special side stories in multiple issues and specials, slowly unraveling the mysteries of the floating island, which eventually culminate in the start to his series. This is the only one of those stories I'll cover for now, and I'll give them their own episodes sometime in the future. Ken Penders has actually said before that he preferred writing for Knuckles over Sonic, because with Sonic, his storyline and lore were generally set. Meanwhile, Knuckles and his world weren't very explored, and Ken could do whatever he wanted to with the island, his backstory, his supporting cast, pretty much everything. Large parts of future Knuckles stories were based on concepts for original properties that Ken had made and then molded into the Sonic universe. And as many of you I'm sure know, he would go on to try and make the final product into its own thing, whenever he finally releases the Lara Suit Chronicles. Issue 26 will be a pretty quick one. It features 2 stories. In the first, Robotnik creates a machine that can control the weather with a goal to freeze the Freedom Fighters and make them easier to hunt. However, the Freedom Fighters teamed up with a bunch of Arctic Mobians that had been hiding from Robotnik, and were able to turn the tables on Robotnik and Snively, destroying the machine with a flying sonic sickle. The Arctic Mobians were then finally able to return to the Arctic with a vehicle stolen from Robotnik, and would later go on to become the Arctic Freedom Fighters when they returned home. While it's not something that we cover very often, this seems like a good time to talk about how political this comic really is. Although it may not seem so on the surface, and I don't make a big deal about it, the messaging is strong, especially early on. We don't just see the Freedom Fighters in this series actively fight Robotnik. At one point we see them protesting nuclear weaponry, and much like the brief appearance of Knothole Council in this issue, even when a good government is established, the right thing to do is still often to go against its wishes. This comic carries themes of environmentalism, anti-fascism, and the youth standing up to the failures of previous generations, all of which are messages that are still very relevant today. Though there are times when the comic goes a little too far in that messaging, and I'll point out those moments as we get to them. The Arctic Freedom Fighters in this issue are shown as living in fear of Robotnik for years within this cave, but are inspired by our main crew to not only leave their safe cave, but also fight fascism, instead of just living in fear of it. Something that the comic hopes it will impart on its young readers. While this story isn't very important to the lore of the series, I think it's a strong example of its theme and purpose, and it's an important lens to read this comic through. The second story featured the Freedom Fighters exploring a mountain when Sonic accidentally twists his ankle and becomes unable to run. Robotnik chases them into an ancient wooden fort built by Sally's ancestors. Inside, they find a cannon which they fashion into a suit of armor for Bunny, who's able to send Robotnik's new bot bus careening down the side of the mountain and save the other freedom fighters. And now we go on to our third game adaptation of this video. This is the Sonic Triple Trouble Special, another double-length comic adapting the game of the same name. In it, Robotnik gets a Chaos Emerald, but due to the machine he was using to harvest power being faulty, it explodes, splitting the emerald in two and blasting them far away. Realizing how big of an issue a split emerald could cause, Robotnik quickly calls for a bounty hunter. This bounty hunter ends up being Knack the Weasel, also known as Fang the Sniper. The latter is his official name in the games, but in his first appearance, the name was mistranslated as Knack, and that's what the comic decided to go with instead. While in the original game he is working on his own, here he's a lackey for Robotnik. Meanwhile, Rotor notices the power surge, and he, Sonic, and Tails watch as the Shattered Emerald creates a new zone where it lands. Sonic immediately speeds into action, followed by Knack. The other half of the emerald crashes on the floating island, and Knuckles glides over to investigate. However, on the way he ends up falling and going unconscious. The zone that was created is, in essence, an entire Sonic game. At this point, Sonic goes through the entirety of Triple Trouble. Every single zone is accounted for in this montage of panels before he reaches the half emerald at the end. When he gets there though, Knack catches up and knocks out the hedgehog, retrieving the emerald and tying up Sonic in his trunk. Knack then turns towards the floating island to get the other half. Knuckles is awoken to find that he was saved by the Ancient Walkers, silent reptilian figures bearing tribal masks told of in the mythology of the Echidna people. They explained to Knuckles using pictures that the half emerald he was hunting down, now that it's landed, is magnetically attracted to the nearest source of chaos energy it can find. In this case, the Chaos Emerald keeping the island afloat. If the two were to touch, they would fuse, and the unbalanced power from 1.5 emeralds will cause a massive explosion so large it would destroy the island. Knuckles is immediately put back to sleep by the walkers, but awakens back on the surface of the island just in time to see Knack drive by. Knuckles quickly dispatches Knack and knocks his Sky Cycle, the Marvelous Queen, into the water. Sonic is able to escape, and just having a bad day, sees Knuckles and decides it's time to fight someone. The two begin to duke it out, each blaming the other for the situation. Have you noticed a pattern here yet? The fight ends early when they hear Robotnik trying to contact Knack and find the half emerald in his bag. Quickly, Sonic and Knuckles head for the Chaos Chamber and manage to fuse the two halves of the emerald just in time to prevent Calamity. However, they wind up back on the surface, with the emerald gone. While Sonic and Knuckles still don't quite trust each other, they agree to let bygones be bygones and Sonic leaves with Knack in tow, neither sure of what happened to the Chaos Emerald. The emerald is actually summoned by the Ancient Walkers for a mysterious purpose. As the comic says, an age-old prophecy is fulfilled, and the cycle begins anew. Once again, this is Penders trying to build up the lore of the floating island in preparation for his future stories set there. The second story is about Tails. Earlier in the first story, Sonic had mentioned that Rotor was building Tails a submarine, and in this story it's complete. Interestingly, they actually reference the original Sonic miniseries here, with Rotor referring to his bathysphere, and with this story being a sequel to Something Fishy from issue number 1 of the miniseries. Check the cards to find my discussion of those comics. Tails is really excited to give it a go, but is dismayed when Rotor admits that Sally had told him not to put oil in the machine, as she thought Tails was too young, for a perspective he's about 10 here, to be out and about on his own. Tails is getting a real chip on his shoulder from how much everyone treats him like a child, and just blows up at Rotor. He sulks for a while before a seagull covered in oil cries for his help. The Gold says that after Sonic destroyed Jaws' underwater roboticizer back in the miniseries, Robotnik replaced him with the crueler Octobot. He was going through sea animals faster than Jaws ever could have dreamed to. The seagull was able to escape and hoped that the freedom fighters could help. Getting an idea, Tails cleans the oil off the seagull and uses it to lubricate the Sea Fox so he could stop this new threat himself. Tails shows up in Octobot's lair, and both starts and ends the fight by ramming into the robot with a drill. Before Octobot can even really react, Tails sends a torpedo at the roboticizer and destroys it, sending both the submarine and the Badnik flying to the surface and then into the air. Octobot curses Tails and swears revenge, but Tails is just excited to prove that he's more than just a kid. The third story is a follow-up to the Knuckles story from Sonic & Knuckles. And as I said, those will eventually get their own episodes, so just be patient. And that's it for this episode. Next time we'll cover issues 27 through 29, as well as the Tails miniseries. What do all of you think about this new Sonic lore so far? Are you interested in the slowly unfolding story of the Echidnas? Or is Knuckles being given more focus than he really deserves? Let me know in the comments. Next week, we'll be discussing Metroid Samus Returns, the remake to the original Metroid 2 Return of Samus. Until then.